You're watching or listening to Strangers in Space, and for the next 45 minutes, we are going to be talking about Wild Blue Yonder, so you don't have to. Hi, I'm JR.
I'm Ian.
I'm John.
And I'm Simon.
All right, then. This was the one that was the one that we knew nothing about. And the one that Russell T Davies said was unlike anything Doctor Who's ever done before. Completely unique. And he said the people who saw the preview, the people from the official Doctor Who podcast, I think it was, their jaws were on the floor. I'm not entirely sure when he said their jaws were on the floor that he wasn't just talking about a scene from the actual programme itself. Let's go round in a circle quickly then and kind of say briefly whether we liked it or how much we liked it, whatever. And then we'll dig into it a bit. So let's go reverse alphabetical. Simon, I'm going to start with you because Matt refused to last week, even though you're the Doctor and Donna fan. This was all Doctor and Donna all the time, wasn't it? How was that for you, Simon?
It was great. It was great. Simple as that.
Okay, that's brilliant. You saw me drinking, didn't you, and decided to cut it short.
Do you want to say any more?
Yeah, dig in a bit more, Simon. Give me a bit more of a... Because it was Tennant and Tate and Tennant and Tate and Tennant and Tate pretty much the whole way through. Is that all your dreams come true? Or actually, do they work better when there's something a bit more to play off?
No, I think they were great. I think I didn't stop for a moment to think about, oh, who are the people in control here? You know, you got carried along by them. As far as I was concerned, they were going through the adventure, and I was thinking about everything else except them because they were a safe pair of hands. So, no, I just thought it was really great and an opportunity to kind of play around with their characters. And I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but it was kind of nice to hear that things have been taken on board from the Jodie era as well, and that was carrying through as well. Yeah. So it was ticking a lot of boxes, shall we say.
Oh yeah, if you want to talk about things later, you're gonna have to remind me because I've got no notes whatsoever in front of me. So
you remember all the actors' names now?
Well, no, actually, I don't remember the name of the. There were three other credited cast, weren't there? Actually, I didn't look at the end. Were there three other credited cast?
Yeah, it's the two in the first scene, plus with someone we'll come to at the end.
Was there two in the first scene? Because I thought there was one in the first scene. One was the voice of the computer, and one is the person at the end.
Was there someone there with me at the start?
Two in the first scene.
Yes,
there was like a housekeeper or whatever.
Yeah.
Was there? Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, Ian, seeing as you're there, tell me, did you enjoy it?
I enjoyed it very much. I thought the performances were excellent. I thought there were certain shortcomings elsewhere, but the performances were brilliant.
And John?
Well, it's RTD. He likes to give his actors a showcase. He likes to work them at some point during the season. And having brought Tennant and Tate back, this struck me as he wants to give them an opportunity to kind of stretch themselves, and for him to stretch himself with just essentially two actors for the whole thing. So yeah. I thought, it's kind of, in that way, it's kind of his midnight of this kind of mini series. So it's almost more an exercise for the actors and him. But yeah, I generally enjoyed it, and I think as my wife said, that was an hour of what the hell have I just watched telly, one way or the other, if you don't like it or not, don't like it.
I feel like he was more stretching the CGI budget and the brains of the people who'd have to put it on screen. So rather than it being a plot kind of midnighty twist, it was more of a production stretch.
I
thought that was it. We haven't seen anything like this in Doctor because we've never seen that kind of level of effects work before.
Not since Underworld, anyway.
Absolutely, yes. It's sort of stopped being a TV show at this point, and it is now basically a Star Wars. But that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, the effects were nice. I guess we'll come back to the effects. I didn't think Tennant and Tate was stretched. I think what he did was he just played to their strengths, or their strengths as he perceives them. Or I guess what he was playing to was he was playing to the beats that played out in 2008, and he was kind of distilling them into something where those. So a lot. I mean, a lot of those conversations between the sort of fake tenants and the real Donners and vice versa. A lot of that reminded me of that last sort of 5 minutes of the plot part of Journey's End, where you get the Dr. Donner thing happening, and so you get sort of variations on the characters, but they're still the characters. So it's kind of the characters plus, if you see what I mean. So that was kind of going on in Journey's End, and I think what he was doing here was taking basically the skeleton of Midnight and transposing the last 5 minutes of Journey's End into the skeleton of Midnight. And so far be it from it's not something Doctor Who's ever done before. I think it basically was really stuff that Doctor Who's done before. And he was just kind of, he distilled it sort of down to its basic elements. And so you got rid of all the fluff, all the fripperies, the Davros and the Daleks and all that kind of stuff. And basically you just have a series of Doctors and Donners. And so that was really what it came down to. I'm assuming when he says jaws were on the floor and it was something that Doctor Who's never done before, I'm assuming what he means is the fact that there is basically no guest cast to speak of. There's somebody in the pre-titles, and there's somebody in the sort of credits, sort of cliffhanger into next week. But the main body of the plot was just 2 actors, wasn't it? That's what he was talking about, isn't it?
Either that or the a lot of the effects and the imagination that was going on as well. You know, Doctor Who hasn't quite done the thing yet, has it? And it really did do the thing, didn't it, tonight?
Yeah, but I don't think that's what he was talking about though, because Doctor Who has done quite effects heavy stuff before. Quite a bit of Flux was quite effects heavy, and of course the spaceship wasn't entirely dissimilar from the one in World Enough and Time, say for example.
And fundamentally, he's a writer, so whenever he's talking about stuff he's written, he's going to be talking about the writing and the story and the structure. So
I thought in plot terms, because I said a few weeks ago, didn't I wonder if it'll be a bit like Solaris. And when I said it, I wonder if it'll be a bit like Solaris, what I meant was an excuse to bring in the ghosts of other Doctors and Companions. But what actually happened was it wasn't entirely unlike Solaris after all.
No.
Because in Solaris, what you have is imaginary versions of the friends and family of people on the spaceship. So essentially, those imaginary versions became reflections of the people on the spaceship, being the Doctor and Donna. But essentially, it's kind of the same conceit, that you've got real people on a spaceship and they're stuck there with imaginary versions of people they know. So essentially, it was Solaris. It was Solaris done via silent running, really, wasn't it? In a way.
Yes, but framed into an action-adventure series, which gives that a slightly different, maybe a slightly jarring tone.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Oh, that's what I mean. Silent running becomes about this sort of chase across the spaceship to save the spaceship or to get off it before you die, right? So
yeah, but it's Moffat type thing with no villains. So, but here, obviously we do have villains. That's just the point there.
Essentially, it's the villains from Midnight, though, isn't it? In other words, they exist. So this is what Russell T Davies does, isn't it? He creates a villain that doesn't actually have any sort of life off the page, any sort of agency off the page.
It's a conceptual villain, isn't it, really?
It's a conceit to facilitate what he wants to do with the characters. Yeah. Exactly the same as he did in Midnight. Basically, this is the creature from Midnight, except this time, instead of repeating the voice, it's repeating the face. So kind of even that is kind of repetition.
It's becoming the person, which is what the creature of Midnight did, of course.
Exactly so.
So it took the personality. It's a personality parasite. Do we have that kind of thing?
Yeah, I guess that's what it is.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, go on.
Well, I was just going to say, and so it's Russell T Davies doing a Moffat, I think, or doing a Russell T Davies version of a Moffat. Because I don't think Russell T Davies had really done these sort of high concept things before Stephen Moffat started to become known for the one who does the high concept things. And then all of a sudden Russell T Davies comes up with Midnight, almost as a riposte, as if to say, well, I can do that too. And this felt like, in this sort of mini series of 3 episodes, the opening episode last week is the sort of big, sort of bold, brash, but not really an awful lot going on under the hood, but good stuff for the characters and a nice twist for the characters. So last week was like partners in crime, except with a really decent twist at the end, because I thought the twist at the end to bring Donna out of the meta crisis, that was fantastic. So it was like partners in crime with a little bit more substance. And then this week is very much, I think, midnight. So it's Russell T Davies doing that I can do the concept thing. And then next week
Journey's End next week.
yeah, exactly. Next week will be the absolutely mad as hell sort of finale, won't it? I don't know. For what it gets Tennant and Tate to do then. So Simon, let me come back to you. So, I mean, your favourite version of David Tennant is the one that plays opposite Donna, presumably. And this then is Russell T Davies giving you 50 minutes of just purely that. So, because we all know I'm a bit of a David Tennant sort of phobe in some respects, but I've got to be honest, I wasn't as irritated by any stretch of the imagination as when he was doing it week in, week out. This is a 15 years older David Tennant, but I think he was still giving exactly the same character, but I know, the same character as played by an actor who's 15 years older. And actually, we had a lot of quiet moments this week, but we had quiet moments in stories like Gridlock, the bit where he talks to Martha about Gallifrey. This reminded me of things like that, sort of into the mix with sort of like Midnight and Silent Running and whatever else. So Simon, just the Doctor for now, but how did Tennant work for you this week?
Yeah,
did you see
great.
more, or did you think, like I say, it's basically the Tennant of 15 years ago, but played by somebody who's half as old again?
Absolutely, yeah. No, I think there's the consistencies there, and I'm loving that maturity, and I'm loving the fact that it's kind of toned down a little bit more, but it is literally a character who is older, and that's to his credit. I think that he's doing that. There's a softness and a vulnerability to him, which wasn't there before. And I quite like the little moments where he turns around and says, "Oh, this is what I do now," So yeah, I just think it's working really well. I mean, it says a lot for Donna's character that out of all the companions David Tennant had, that she's the one he kind of trusts the most in a funny way. That there's things he's going to let go of and talk to her about. And she kind of knows him. I mean, there's an obvious reason why she knows him, because of the whole meta crisis thing. But equally, she's matured as well, and she's able to read him, and they're kind of on a level now, which I don't think was quite there before. There was always this kind of mistrust between her and him, certainly from her direction, and now he kind of out of possibly all the companions, there's a connection there which that works on a level just like a proper friendship, that there is a platonic thing whereby he can be himself in a funny way.
Yeah.
So I just think it's really interesting. I mean, it's dare I say it's a shame we're only going to get 3 episodes of this. Dare I say that?
Don't say that. Don't say that.
No, I won't say that.
I think 3 episodes is fine.
Yes. Okay. Fine.
I mean, you've got to be completely honest about this. If it had been an entire series,
Yeah.
or you're more than, substantially more than 3 episodes, we wouldn't have had that last week. We wouldn't be getting this week.
No.
He would have done something entirely different with it.
Yeah,
Last week,
yeah.
he had to solve the meta crisis, so that then you could have 2 episodes where the Doctor and Donna are just relating with each other like they did in Series 8. So last week had to solve the meta crisis. And so he wrote this story, and, I had problems with it, as we discussed. But actually, I think the conceit for solving the meta crisis is brilliant story beat that he threads into the story. And so last week's story comes out of that. And I think this week, you'd never have had this either, because it's clear that he wanted to spend this week just concentrating absolutely 100% on the pair of them, right? So you wouldn't have had this either. And again, probably next week it'll be the same. But Iain, tell me how you found David Tennant in this episode.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because he's mellowed, or in the last 15 years I've mellowed, or but I mean, my main feeling from last week was that we've got the fun back in the show, and that's actually what's been missing for a long time. And he was fun last week, he was fun this week. There's a lightness to it, and okay, he still does all the things that we got bored of watching, but that's kind of our fault for watching each episode 3-5 times. He's doing what he does, and it's very popular, and it's huge fun to watch, and you can't take your eyes off it.
Do you know what I did this week?
You took your eyes off it, didn't you?
No. I'm glad Matt's not here, because I wouldn't have been able to admit to this if Matt was here, and he doesn't watch or listen to these back, so he'll never hear this, as long as, you know, one of our listeners doesn't repeat it to him. I laughed.
I laughed.
What?
Yeah.
I laughed. Just
Yeah.
once, but I did. I laughed. Against my better judgment as well, because I hated the joke.
I
And
laughed
yet,
twice.
did you?
Which bits did you?
Well, tell me what your second one was, and I'll tell you.
I
what
can't
my first
remember
one
what it was. I think there was obviously Catherine Tate in the teaser, and then I'm sure there was something Tennant did as well that made me laugh.
Well, I'll tell you the thing I laughed at was, and this is a joke that's been done before, and I knew it was coming, and I could feel it, and then it happened, and the performances were just driving me up the wall, and yet I still laughed. No, don't do that. No, don't do that. No, really, don't do that. No, don't do that. And then he joins in.
Yeah.
And that made me laugh because he joined in.
Love it. Yeah, I mean, I thought the Mavity was quite weak source to justify that prologue, really.
I thought they were going to do something about that at the end.
Yeah.
I thought they were going to go
I
back.
thought that was going to be the key.
I think, I wonder, I mean, clearly it was obviously a conscious decision to do the sort of colourblind version of Isaac Newton, which was a slightly odd decision in Doctor Who. But I think that goes back to the notion that you get sometimes that in Doctor Who, the universe is reset so many times that it's not quite the same universe as we live in anyway. So it's kind of justified. So it was one of those things where, because as soon as he sat under the apple tree, I thought, oh, he's doing Isaac Newton, isn't he? And I thought, I wonder how that'll play for a sort of Saturday evening audience. Because you'd see things like the Armand Iannucci version of David Copperfield that's got colourblind casting, right? Or something like, what's that thing called that's on Amazon Prime? Or so Bridgerton. That's got very colourblind casting as well, hasn't it? And these play to like either subscription audiences or people who are paying money over at the sort of cinema box office or whatever. They're playing to people who know what they're getting going in. But if you do colourblind casting of a really famous person to an audience that isn't prepared for that, I wonder if they kind of scratch their heads a bit and think, I wonder why that is. Because a lot of those people won't have heard of the concept of colourblind casting, let alone have sort of come up against it before. So I don't know. I can't work out whether that was brave or slightly odd or whatever, but I quite liked it. But I did wonder if he'd put that prologue in so he could come back at the end and sort of change things back to the way they should have been, at least in terms of the word rather than the character. I mean,
well, is that going to turn out to be the big thing for episode 3, that they have to reboot the universe by changing the word back to gravity?
Yeah, it did occur to me. I wonder if not necessarily the word, but the word could be a symptom of the thing they have to change, right? So yeah, but then again, later in the episode, they come up with the other sort of origins thing for the toy maker, because the Doctor talks about this deep into space, we've affected something, doesn't he? I can't remember exactly what it says.
He's used a superstition at the end of the universe.
That's right. He's used a superstition. That's potions from the end of time, isn't it? That's about on a level with that.
It's a right. Yeah, it's a right of going, this can happen. I want this to happen, therefore it'll happen.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of that towards the end of the episode.
Oh my God, there's a ton of that all the way through the episode. And I guess it goes back to what I was saying before about whether you rub up against Russell T Davies the wrong way with this kind of stuff, because he fills his characters' mouths with so much baffle gab sometimes, and I just don't think it's really necessary. Sometimes I think, why bother to explain it if you're only going to explain it in, because some of the stuff he comes up with just sounds so weak anyway, I think sometimes. And I think he's a much better writer when he's not doing that stuff. The scene in the room with the glass divide, that's what, like, he's done rooms with glass divides in before. Last week, I thought was the weakest part of the episode, because it's just two characters shouting bafflegab at each other across a pane of glass. And I just thought, you don't need that. You could have done that scene without all that stuff. But anyway, I didn't ask you, John, what you thought of David Tennant this time.
I like it because, again, he's very, very good at giving two performances in one scene, as he does here. Because I say I relatively recently I've rewatched Human Nature, and there's one scene in there which he's giving three distinct performances and timing them on lines. He's a very, very good actor on that front. And I think it's quite a nuanced performance here as well, because it's sometimes you have to be when you're giving yourself away, and when you're having to play yourself and not give yourself away. It's a very difficult thing for an actor to do, because essentially you're playing yourself, so to speak. So I think both of them did really well on that. Generally, you need two good actors to sell that conceit, because if they don't play, give those performances, it falls apart completely, because it's the finished premise for a story.
Yeah, it's a very simple premise for a story.
Absolutely.
It's a bit thin for 60 minutes. I guess that's why this episode comes in at like 5 minutes shorter, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because they basically played it for all it was worth. Catherine Tate is really good at playing Evil Donna when she's only playing ever so slight. We'll come back to that point.
There was a bit where she was wrestling with herself. And
I want to come back to Catherine Tate in a minute.
Little Angela Rayner fantasy.
I'll give my couple of kind
I love that. I think that's right. I think, this is therapeutic.
But I'm sort of in the same place as Iain is. David Tennant does irritate me a lot, but I'm a lot less irritated by him. And I don't know if that's because I know there's only one more episode to go. I
think it's because, again, Iain was right. He's taken the mannerisms down.
I don't think he has. I don't think he has. I think he's still doing them. I think he's just 15 years older. But no, I think he's still doing them. But I want to put this idea out in the world. I think he's still doing them. But back when he was doing it for 3 years in a row, for 14 episodes a year, you saw an awful lot of those mannerisms. Now we're seeing those mannerisms for the first time in 15 years. And so it feels like there's less of them. Maybe it feels like they're toned down. I don't think they actually are. I think it's just that A, he's 15 years older, and B, it's been such a long time since we've seen them. Because when you see them every week in a row for 13 weeks, it's not just that you see the thing, but you see the thing that you saw last week and the week before and the week before, and they kind of build.
Yeah.
So they're sort of so if you get irritated by them, that can get under your skin and stay there, and it doesn't go away because it happens again and again and again, and it just builds. And I think it's just that. Yeah, basically, it's been such a long time.
It's the same thing as a writer. Any actor, no matter how good, has only got such a limited toolkit, and if you get that 14 times a year, there's only so much you can do.
Exactly. Yeah.
And how many times were you in Game of Thrones?
Twice.
So we didn't have time to get bored of your shtick.
Exactly that.
Right.
And I had a mask on for one of them, so no one could see my face. So no one could tell I was doing the same thing twice. It was great. I think what Simon held as well. It's just a little bit of a warmer performance. He's relating to the human character, particularly. I think you see it particularly at the end with the hugging and that last tag scene.
I tell you what I really liked with that was when he did start talking about the Timeless Child storyline, and that came up, and it became a plot point as well. So that's kind of 2 weeks in a row where he's made plot points out of something from the Chibnall era. So all these people who wanted him to sort of turn his back on that and kind of ignore it, that's certainly not happened. And he hasn't gone overboard in referring to it in such a way as to sort of like be really ostentatious. I'm absolutely not forgetting this, and you're never going to hear the end of it because I'm going to bring it up every 5 minutes. Instead, what he does is he brings it up once, but he makes it an important plot point that you cannot ignore. Otherwise, the plot doesn't work. So it becomes fundamental. So the thing about it this week, because it became the way he recognized which one was the right Donna and which one was the wrong Donna, essentially, because the wrong Donna has all the knowledge, because the creatures, such as they are, have absorbed the memories of both of them together and then split them into the two sort of versions. But each one has access to the other one's memories. And that's how the wrong Donna knows what the Doctor has been up to for the last 15 years, because the wrong Donna's got the Doctor's memories. And so that plot point rests on the wrong Donna knowing about the timeless child. See, Russell T Davies, when he comes up with stuff like that, it's brilliant. And then he has about 15 minutes worth of baffle gab that really pisses me off. For every good thing, there's a...
So my biggest personal problem, and this is a ridiculous thing to get hung up on, and I apologise for inflicting it on you guys.
Sorry, I've been talking for the last 25 minutes, so if you want to get hung up on ridiculous things, Russell, you're fine.
He's demonstrated, he's watched Flux, he's referencing Flux, he makes a big thing about the Flux and the effect it had.
Even says the word.
He even says the word. So he's saying, I watched Flux, we're following on from Flux. So when the Doctor's standing at the edge of the universe going, I've never been here before, I'm thinking, well, you were between universes 3 episodes ago. So yes, you have.
And didn't you see Hellbent?
Right.
Planet of Evil?
Yeah. It's the hyperbole that comes out of Russell T Davies's mouth and out of his pen and into David Tennant's mouth, isn't it? Let's talk about Donna then. Simon, I got to come back to you first. No, I tell you what, let's go in the other order so that Simon can finesse what everybody else says, maybe. Because otherwise, it feels, I suddenly struck me, it feels like I'm putting Simon on the spot all the time, coming to him first. And I don't want to do that. So, John, I'm going to come back to you first then. Catherine Tate. I mean, she's playing sort of 3 different characters here, kind of in a way. Yeah. Did you enjoy it?
Absolutely. She gets enough comic material as well, just to make things work as well. She has fun with it. Russell, like you said, he knows what his actors are good at. I think if you didn't give, even in something like this, if you didn't give Catherine Tate some comic material, it was great. I mean, what I think part of what I really loved was the way they just dropped that "my arms are too big" thing line in. Both of them did that beautifully. We should know that from Midnight now, where Russell drops those words in, which it's old technique. But we haven't seen, we never saw Catherine Tate play the Midnight thing, and I really like the way she did that here. Again, I think she could have done. I know the plot of Midnight doesn't know. She could have done that. What Leslie, what's her surname?
Sharp.
Leslie Sharp. Yes, thank you. She could have done what Leslie Sharp did then, equally as well.
I only remember Leslie Sharp because I was watching Whistling and I'll Come to You last night. We'll get to that in a few weeks.
But I thought she had tremendous moment. She got the moment, as I mentioned earlier, a therapeutic moment where she gets to slap herself. I just wonder what you see, what you think of when you look on a screen and you see your face that size as well. I was expecting I was expecting more of the "does my bum look big" in this kind of stuff as well. We did get some of that, but
does my face look big in that wall?
Yeah, does my face look big on that? Crammed up like that. Yeah, I thought she was great. Again, two actors, you can pretty much give them anything and they'll knock out the part between them. It's a relationship between them that's the thing that I love. And I don't particularly like Tennant's Doctor away from Catherine Tate, but I think together there's the relationship they have. I would, again, I'm not a big fan of individual stories on that 4th season, but I really love watching those two together because they're obviously having a ball and they're great actors, and it's a winning formula.
I've got to say, I think they're both very limited in terms of performers, in terms of being performers. She's very good at some things and she's very good at other things, but I think there are grey areas in between where she can go from 3 to 10, but she doesn't do 6 and 7 in between, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
But I think Russell T Davies is very good at figuring out the things that he wants them to do, that they're capable of. And so the performance he gets from her is the one he knows that she'll be able to give him.
Yeah.
And so he writes the beats that he knows that she can do. And I think he does that better here, actually, than he did back in 2008. In 2008, I always come back to the Ood episode because I think the Ood episode is appalling. But there's a bit where she goes straight from joking about to crying, and there's no in between. She doesn't go from joking about to crying. She's joking about, then she's crying. And there's no point either in the writing of that scene or the performance of that scene where she comes to the tears. She just arrives at the tears before anything else. And it may be that something was cut in that scene that made it happen that way. But certainly, I think that's kind of an indicator for the performance. She goes straight from quiet to really loud. And oftentimes she doesn't do much in between. I think she's better at doing the stuff in between now. I still don't think she's great at it. But I think what he's giving her to do and what she's giving back is they're finding the sweet spots. And so,
and I think we've got to bear in mind, well, obviously the editor is your best friend in television these days, and they will pick the takes that they get. So we don't know what she was giving throughout on certain scenes.
Well, and plus you've got these sort of 55, 60-minute episodes, whatever they are. They give you a bit more room for maneuver in terms of how all that stuff plays out, don't they?
Absolutely.
Iain, before I come back to Simon then, because I've just said something that mortally offended him, so I'm going to give him a couple of minutes to forget it before I get to him. Donna, Iain.
Yeah. So, and I'll preface this by saying I was never like a huge Catherine Tate fan, so I hadn't really seen her in anything before Doctor Who. And I did think she was magnificent in 2008. And I can't put my finger on why, but she's even better now. She's even stronger. She's so watchable. It doesn't feel like watching a performance most of the time she's on screen. She just is Donna. And that's something that very few of the companions have managed to achieve. But I find it's probably, again, part of the writing, but I find Donna so fabulous that she's able to inhabit it absolutely fully. And that joke in the teaser about, you know, the gravity of the situation, oh, that was good. That was the best moment. The episode could have ended there and I'd have been happy with my 10 million pounds of Disney money. That was well spent. That was a good joke.
I think if the episode had ended there, I'd have been just as happy as you were.
Yeah.
And on that note, and while he's drinking,
yeah, we time all of this just so that when you reach for your bottle, Simon, that's when we shoot you a question. We spend hours
also,
planning this.
I mean, I was going to say follow Iain, but I don't think you need to. So shall we move on?
No. Just this once. I think the thing is that the reason why I've always loved Catherine Tate is because she has this intelligence and she's a people watcher. And when she creates characters, they are so fully formed that she's able to say in her head, what would Donna do in this situation? And, you know, and all credit to Rusty Davis for the writing as well, because he's obviously doing the same thing, but she gets it tone perfect. So, and the other incredible thing, I think, is that I don't know to what degree she's just trying to wind up the fans or what, but when you see interviews with Catherine Tate, she plays very dumb as far as sci-fi is concerned and the whole genre and understanding it all and saying, well, I'll walk in a room and I don't know, you know, saying about that she didn't know that people were inside the Daleks and things like that. But actually what that does is it gives her a grounding, and it gives her a very real grounding, so that this character Donna is actually reacting to things possibly how a real person would, to a certain extent. You know, when she turns around and, you know, and he sort of says, well, there's this malevolent force somewhere on the ship, I think, or something like that. And she goes, right, let's go and kick its ass.
Hostile action, isn't it? The use of the word hostile, isn't it?
Yeah, but it made perfect sense. I mean, it wasn't just. Well, it is bravado, but that's the other thing, is that you were saying about that point where she goes straight from laughter to tears. But then that is somebody with that who puts up that front, and that's exactly who she is. So that's her survival mechanism. But actually, she has a massive heart, and in turn will will react to situations in a very emotional way and very extreme way. So I don't quite feel that. I mean, I haven't watched that episode in a long time, so your observation is probably right, that there is such a heavy tonal shift that it isn't quite right, and maybe that's in the writing or the editing. But
also, I think it's where it falls in the season, because I think that's something her character would do after she's been with the Doctor for a while.
Yeah.
And it's like third story. Fires of Pompeii, where she starts bossing the Doctor around, morally bossing the Doctor around far too early. Planet of the Ood, where she's suddenly got all this empathy far too early. End of Planet of the Ood is when you get the premonition that their story's over. Well, that's three episodes into a 13-episode run. Those stories are just completely out of sequence. Something went badly wrong there.
No, I think Fires on Pompeii works that way. It's the usual thing with Russell and the companion.
But after those
has
two
that human
episodes,
view.
her character doesn't have anywhere else to go and doesn't go anywhere. So then she's treading water for like 8 or 9 weeks before you get to the finale. It should be, and this is not on her, this is on the writer. It should be a gradual process across the course of that series, and it's
on
not.
the scheduling of the stories more than that, I would say.
Maybe we're just seeing them in the wrong order.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a secret running order that they were made to be watched in that they subsequently fiddled about with, and maybe there is an arc there that if we watch them all in a different order, we'll uncover this sequential growth in her character.
Oh, like The Prisoner.
Yeah.
Change the order around. Have fun.
Yeah. I think it would work better in a different order. I don't think it was. I think that's just Russell T Davies has this thing sometimes of throwing stuff in at weird places, like Rose in that first season with Christopher Eccleston. Rose leaves her boyfriend to run off with the Doctor, and if you look at the way the episodes are set out, because their episodes are written with a sort of daily schedule of how they happen in Rose's timeline, and so she leaves her boyfriend to run off with the Doctor on day 1. Dalek takes place on like day 3, and already she's lost interest in the Doctor and she's fallen for some other boy. 2 days after that, she's lost interest in the other boy and she's fallen for Captain Jack. The next day after that, she's suddenly interested in Noel Clarke again, and then the next day after that, she's snogging Christopher Eccleston.
So we've never been a 17-year-old girl, but they do sometimes act like that from memory.
But you know what I mean? It's like, in terms of writing the season, he threw an awful lot of stuff at the screen in awfully quick succession that I don't think really works if you dig into it too much. But we've sort of gone off on a wild tangent about Russell T Davies' first stint. What was the thing you said? We'll talk about that later. We'll have to bring that back up. That was something really interesting. It wasn't the Doctor talking about being gay, or because there was that whole thing where Catherine Tate says, "Oh, you've not kept it very far under the surface, have you?" That was a sweet little moment.
That was lovely.
I loved the moment where he just gave Donna's hand a quick kiss. I thought that was a really lovely acting moment. I'm guessing.
See, I thought that was the actor coming through rather than the character.
Well,
I think
however,
the characters have changed during the years.
This is the Doctor who used to be a woman and is that much more in tune with his emotional state, so he can comment on the hotness of men that he never previously did. And now he absolutely would kiss Donna because he loves her so much. And he's got this unbelievable second chance to spend time with her. So I bought that completely.
What's that last week? I do that now. So he's still finding out how his character's changed.
And it won't be for very long because he's got 60 more minutes.
No, I'm feeling a bit. I could do with a bit more of this. I think 3 weeks is, in hindsight, it's going to look like not quite enough. And I never thought I'd hear myself advocating for more Tennant, but here I am.
I mean, oddly, the way it's worked out because of the broadcast schedule, it might have made more sense for Tennant to do a little mini series of 3 where you're just Tennant and Tate having fun, enjoying each other's company. And then the Christmas special could have been Tennant as well, to regenerate into Ncuti Gatwa to arrive in 2024. It might have made more sense that way because of how close they've actually been broadcast in the end. And they did know quite some while ago that they were going to broadcast them now, because they talk about the dates in some of the stuff that they filmed for the behind the scenes stuff that was filmed months and months ago. So they must have known. Is there more then? I always say, is there more? We'll give it a score in a minute, but there must be more things to bring up. But having said that, it wasn't as textured an episode, and it's not like we've got about 15 cast members to talk about or anything like that. We talk about Cribbins in a moment, I guess, but Simon?
I do wish they could have. I do wish they could. I kind of feel like this one might be not in the writing sense, but certainly in production sense, this is the poor cousin of the other 2 episodes, because if they could have focused a little bit more on the production, that we've not had green screen to that level in Doctor Who for a very long time, and I made the joke about Underworld for a reason, which was that they did look disconnected from the surroundings. I've recently watched the Star Wars prequels, so very much in that mind at the moment.
There was some of that,
There was some of that, and there were little choices like when David Tennant stuck his head through his own legs, and his head was pretty much disembodied from the rest of the scene. And it was just kind of, I can see what you're trying to do, but surely there's got to be better ways of doing that.
When she's driving the cart, and so it's speeding, and it just looks like there's a couple of dolls and a toy or something. It was,
And then it started feeling like it hasn't moved on that much from 2005 sometimes.
I was kind of disappointed that Russell didn't go for a filthy gag when Tennant did that with his head coming through his own legs.
Oh, I'll do that now. See you later.
But just on Simon's point, Russell T Davies has brought back basically all the people who did the effects and the prosthetics and everything from the 2005 to 2008. And back then, there was this kind of thing that Doctor Who was cornball. The effects never looked real. The prosthetics never looked real. They always looked cornball. And I'm not sure that looks so great in HD. So I do think you're onto something there, that there's something just a little bit crappy about it.
Prosthetics wise, the scene where they started going on about their arms being too long, and then there's David Tennant walking along with those massive hands dragging behind him. That was incredible. And that is the point where I turn around to my daughter and she's looking at me saying, what? This is just so weird. It is. You do look like you're looking at an acid dream. I thought that was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Then there was another shot. There was one shot though with the dragging the arm where it just looked like he was wearing this long plastic arm. Or her, I think it was.
Sure,
her,
Donna's looked a lot.
Donna's didn't work quite the same. No, it almost needed to go far bigger than what it did, because the hands looked amazing. The work in there was something else.
I have the absolute opposite reaction to you there, Simon, because I think visually it's never looked, even if it still doesn't look convincing, it's never looked this amazing, and the production was so good. The actual story, though, I found it boring.
I've got to say, I think the first half an hour before the weird stuff, as soon as the weird stuff started happening, I was totally on board for that, because that sort of tickled my terror of the Autons gene, with the plastic mannequins with the stupidly sized heads and stuff. Fantastic. This was sort of tickling that sort of gene. But before that, there were some quite long scenes of them just standing in these empty, cold rooms with no distinguishing feature. The bit where she's moving the things from down there to up here with no rhyme or reason as to where they were supposed to go, just felt, why do we need this? And you need it so that you can have the bit where the wrong Tennant walks in, and then elsewhere the wrong Tate walks in. But there must have been a better way of doing it than just having her moving these things from one filing cabinet to another and filing them in the wrong places because there's no rhyme or reason about where they need to go.
I've just remembered the bit I laughed at with David Tennant is where he licks the thing and then he's like, no, I'm just kidding. That bit, that was so good.
I'm looking at Jar's face here and he's disagreeing madly.
I do agree that it felt slow, and I was thinking, I really hope this is building up to something. But that was kind of the point where you got that strange edit where I turned around to my daughter and said, "Oh, that was a bit of a funny edit," where it started doing the Solaris thing.
Yeah.
But so, and I like that. I like the fact that it starts sending your brain off in a completely wrong direction. Because I started thinking, is there some kind of time dilation going on or something like that, or are we seeing what's happening over a period of time? But it wasn't. It was just the fact that there were different places and there was different versions. It was really disorientating.
I had a 9-year-old sharing the chair with me, and even before we saw the other Tennant and Tate, as soon as she says, "Oh, my arms feel a bit long," or something, there was a line of dialogue she said just before it cut. She says the line of dialogue, and I just nudged him and said, "That's the wrong Donna." And so I missed the next 5 minutes of the scene because he just kept saying to me, "What do you mean it's the wrong Donna?"
And I think as well, for all that I might have said nice things about Russell Davies, it does just come to blow everything up again as the answer to the plot. So, again, like we said last week, like I said, it's like Robert Holmes. Have fun for the duration of the episode, 5 minutes left, everything blows up.
Yeah. I mean, I think Davis has got better he has something blowing up, but I think he's got better at putting something in there that kind of justifies it. So both of these last 2 episodes have had a sort of justification, and I thought the justification really worked, even if the actual plot resolution itself was the usual bollocks.
Although I did like the TARDIS ramp flipping up at the end.
Oh yeah, that was
good.
Yeah.
I was a little bit. That was all a bit obvious for me.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
It felt like a bit of a cheap shot, a last little ramp of drama that he's taken the wrong Donna.
He's ramping it up.
Hey!
Can I just butt in, because obviously I wasn't on the last show and I didn't get to talk about the Star Beast, but I'm still a bit uncertain as to why Disney is spending all that money on the set for the TARDIS console room when it just needs to be the console. It's just so big and multi-layered and huge and flippy and exciting. But is that where we're putting the money? Why?
Well, it's Bad Wolf, isn't it? Rather than Disney, I think, who are sort of.
And Bad Wolf have a deal with Sony, so it might be Sony money as well.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, it's sort of come to light this week that Russell T Davies doesn't sound terrifically happy with the opening title sequence.
Oh, okay.
And in particular, something I pointed out last week, I said it's the first time you've had an opening title sequence where you get camera cuts and changed perspectives. Previously, you go down the title sequence and you are going down that tunnel with the camera, with the titles coming towards you, and it's one unbroken journey. And now you've got lots of cuts and changed perspectives and all this kind of stuff. And there was an interview where Russell T Davies said something along the lines of, "Oh, we might need to tweak this. This is how it came back to us," giving the impression that there wasn't therefore time to change it before it went to air, and it's not what they asked for by the sound of it. So I wonder if they've given it to an effects house and sort of given them a rough idea of what they wanted, but then the effects house have come back with something that is not the Doctor Who title sequence.
It's a bit messy for them.
Yeah, there's that shot saying again about watching the Star Wars prequels. Do you remember in Attack of the Clones where they started doing those zoom shots with like a wobbly cam?
Yes.
And you get that in the title sequence, don't you? Which is quite jarring compared to the rest of it because it completely breaks the flow, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's like the whole thing is like really sort of not quite. It's not a Doctor Who title sequence. It's a Doctor Who title sequence as made by the people who make American cop shows. It's just it just doesn't work. It's just anyway. Is there more? Should we give it a score?
Did you want to go back to the Bernard Cribbins point?
Yes.
Oh yes, of course. Well, I mean, that's for next week, really. Anyway, I don't know if Bernard Cribbins will be in it much next week.
I don't
Probably
think it's.
not.
No, I've seen bits of the Unleashed, and I think it's only one scene. That was literally the only thing they could have for, because it was all he could do with his age and fragility.
Yeah,
So I believe that's it.
Yes, this next week we'll probably do the thing where instead of starting where this one ended, they'll start like either a day later or at least a couple of hours later. And so Bernard Cribbin's cameo is just this week, which is a shame because it means he doesn't get to do anything with those other characters. I wonder if they're being slightly disingenuous, and there might be a scene at the end of next week somewhere where you do get to see Bernard Cribbins with some of the other characters at least. You'd want to see him with a new Rose, right? You'd want to see them interacting.
So and the thing is, it's dedicated to him, isn't it? So that does kind of indicate to me he's not going to be there next week.
No, you're right. You're right.
But they can do wonderful things with CGI nowadays, as this episode is a very strong testament to.
I don't think they'd be so disrespectful as to CGI a Cribbins into next week's episode.
Maybe a Womble, though. Maybe a Womble.
But yeah, it was nice to see him. I don't know if I mentioned it to any of you, but I knew it was coming. So I'd read somewhere that it was going to be that his scene was at the end of this episode. So I kind of knew that's where it was going to go. Because, they had that thing about the 3 cast members, didn't they? And because it leaked, didn't it? Somebody who did the subtitles or something has said, there's only 3 cast members in this week or something. And that kind of leaked anyway. Shall we move on to the score then? And just see if anything else pops into our head before we sign off. But, I think I'll go first because I want to end on a higher note. I'm going to give this a 7, though. For the first 20 minutes, I was a bit kind of, maybe not with this. And then once the weird stuff started happening, it got a lot more fun. But then even then, it still suffered from some of the things about Russell T Davies's writing. Sort of the, let's throw in a chase here for no good reason other than, things are flagging a bit. So let's have a bit of a run around for a couple of minutes. I'd rather things are a bit more organic than just because we've not had anybody running anywhere for a couple of minutes. So it was enjoyable, but it wasn't Stephen Moffat level enjoyable. So I think a 7 for me. John?
Again, I think I'd said this earlier in this episode. I probably said it last week. I do just like watching David Tennant and Catherine Tate just interact, just fun, and as such.
And you had a lot of that this week.
Yeah, I had an absolute lot of it. And so the effects work largely. I mean, I know as we said, a couple of shots maybe didn't work, but largely it's never looked so kind of big, even when it's essentially just a whole lot of corridor running. So I thought that was kind of a nice way to. So I like the conceit. I liked it when it was midnight as well. So I kind of go a 9, I think, for me.
Okay. Wow. Iain.
I'm gonna go 8. I think it was. The acting was just a joy to watch. The effects and the production was a joy to watch, and the story. Yeah. So it loses a couple of marks for that, but an 8.
Fair enough. And Simon, all Tennant, all Tate, all the time, all the scores.
I'm in a quandary really because I'm kind of with Iain because under the surface.
I've just set it up for you with a lot of words. Words. I've given you lots of words. If you go 9, that's going to break up my flow.
I'm going to have to go for a 9. I'm going to have to because I don't know whether it will continue to have that score on other watches because I think for all the points that Ian's made, I don't think the story really takes much scrutiny at all. Although I did like the idea of these strange disembodied characters. It brought to mind a comic strip. I wish I remember the name of it. It was the very last Star Wars comic strip before they did the adaptation of The Empire Strikes Back, where Luke Skywalker and Leia went outside of the universe and met these strange shape-shifting kind of superpowered creatures. And it's the same kind of thing, essentially.
Oh, it might be the same thing, given Russell's a big comics fan.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? It's worth checking out because it's got this beautiful Michael Golden artwork on it. But anyway, it just did some really odd things. And as I say, just the sight of David Tennant walking down the corridor with dragging massive hands behind him is something that will always live with me. And I think kids will grow up watching that almost having this weird kind of memory that if they don't carry on watching Doctor Who, they'll come back 2 years later and say, what was that program where somebody had massive hands walking down a corridor? And it's a sort of weird, we have this
Kenny
weird
Everett,
sensory map of our bodies, don't we? Say that again.
Yeah, it's Kenny Everett, Brotherly Love.
Kenny Everett, yeah. So for that, because it was flipping bonkers in a lot of places, I have to give it a 9.
Fair enough. Yeah, my 9-year-old loved those bits. So next week we'll come back. We'll talk the giggle at the end of Tennant and Tate again. That's the third time we've come to the fourth time we've come to the end of Tennant and Tate, isn't it? After Runaway Bride, Journey's End, and the End of Time. Oh my God, it's like we keep saying goodbye to these people, and yet, like the bad old penny, they keep on coming back.
If only they could have some kind of happy ending and just stay together forever.
I just want one of you at least to work out the little inside joke I just threw in just there. Like a bad penny. That was
I know the joke.
That was what they were going to call the character when they didn't think
it's
Catherine
in
Tate
the,
was
the
going to
writer's
come
tag.
back.
Yeah. It was
And on
the
that
original
note-
character. Yeah.
That joke, that's a 9 for me. It was laboured, but it was genius. So you've got to ultimately go.
I'll give it a 6. You need common
6.
references for a gag.
Sure, yeah. Simon?
Straight out of my head.
So a 2, 1, nothing, 0.
5 for effort.
Until we do this again, I was JR.
I was Ian.
I was John.
And I was Simon.
And we will speak again soon.